Today I'm going to talk about DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. I have a problem with this site, this team, and the, today I'm going to talk about the trouble with DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. Let's start off with just the name, the Department of Government Efficiency. It sounds good, and who's going to say no to that? Don't we want a more efficient government? And of course we do, therefore we're afraid to say that this is a bad idea. But this is the same type of framing of a situation that immigration's using. We're going to deport murderers. Isn't that what you want us to do? Yes. And then they go out and they do something else completely different. The Department of Government Efficiency is doing something completely different than their name would suggest. So let's talk about how it's supposed to work. So it appears that they have a team of young programmers, guys that are in their 20s, and some of them have questionable backgrounds, hacking, those types of things. But maybe they've come around and they're real good programmers. They really understand things like AI, and they're really top performers, and they're in their 20s. I don't care if they're 20, as long as they're good at their job. So these guys, these people, they go into an organization, Social Security or U.S. Aid or some other department. They go in there and they spend a few days looking at all the numbers. They gather numbers. And from what I understand, they're not talking to any people. They're just gathering data. And they gather the data and they come out and they say, if we eliminate this certain percentage of this workforce, we will save this much money. Okay. And so they may come in and say, let's eliminate 10,000 jobs. We're going to save $10 billion over 10 years. And let's put that on our list of successes and let's move on to the next thing. So that's what they've done. Now, this is what it feels like to me. It feels like that they're going in and they're saying, give me a list of all of your employees, the date you hired them, and what their annual salary is. And they sort this. They sort the data up by name and by date of hire and by salary. And then they organize this data so that it's the most senior people on top and the people that are new are on the bottom. And then they take their mouse and they click on that bottom cell, how much money does that bottom person make in a year? And then they click on the next cell and the next cell, and they keep going up until they have a whole bunch of these annual salaries highlighted. And that number comes to say $10 million or 150 million, whatever it is. And they say, look, if I fire everybody on the bottom here, I will save all of these salaries. And why don't we do that? And that's what they do. They just cut those people off and they make up a reason. They say, all right, you are the most inefficient people. We didn't say you were the most junior. They fire the most junior, but they say you are the most inefficient because they can justify firing them by saying they are inefficient, when in fact, they may be the best performers. They just happen to be the newest. And so they fire them and they claim that money as savings. So let's stop and think about this for a minute. Think about, well, slow it down, all right? Just think about the last time you got a new job, or there's a new position at your current workplace, or you went to a whole new organization or something of that nature. How long did it take you to find out how to do your job? Just is your job valuable? What's the best way to do it? Those types of things. This can vary widely. So if you're somebody that's maybe a farm worker and you're out there and you're saying, well, we're going to pick lettuce. There's it's more than just picking up lettuce. You got to, how many should I pick up in a row? How much should I dig? What's the best way to swing my body when I'm doing this? How often do I need to take breaks? When it's hot, should I wear this other type of thing? And should I wear a certain type of gloves? There's some learning to be done, but maybe you can learn how to pick lettuce in a couple of hours. You can be really good at it. But let's suppose that you had a more complex job. You had a background in sales and you got this new job opportunity on the other side of the country, in a whole department of salespeople underneath you, and you've never even seen the product they make before. Maybe they make some type of special type of computer enhancement device. And your job is to manage these salespeople all over the country. And how long is it going to take you to learn your job? You need to learn your areas. You need to learn what your customers want, the different types of customers, the different pricing models. How do you motivate people? What kind of training? How do you hire people? Who's going to retire? All this. You have a lot of things to learn. And it could take you years maybe before you can sit back and go, I know everything there is to know about this job. So that's how long it takes for a job, from picking lettuce up to something very, very complex. Now imagine a bunch of Dodge kids walking into Social Security and just going, we don't need you, we don't need you, we don't need you, and we don't need those people over there. You're all fired. And then they go out and they take credit for saving this money. This is so insanely nonsensical that it's Kafkaesque. It just simply doesn't make sense, and it should be beyond something that you and I are willing to accept as a good practice. That these people are really getting efficient. All they're doing is cutting jobs. Well, let's say that's a good idea. Let's say cutting jobs is what we want them to do. We want to reduce the size of government, so we are going to cut jobs so the government isn't so big. Is that a good idea? Well, let's take an example and say first of all, let's start with this. I've spent 35 years working with companies to make them more efficient. It could be a semiconductor company, a pharmaceutical, an underground mine. These companies range in size from 100 people up to they could have in the company a couple 100,000 people. And I get hired to come in and kind of make things more efficient. In 35 years, I've never once gone to a company and said, you know what you need to do is cut people. That has never, ever been the case in 35 years. I mean, I'm not afraid to say that if that's the solution. That's never been the way to be cost efficient. Although that seems to be 100% of the way that these Dodge kids are figuring out to make themselves more efficient. Let me tell you why. Let's suppose I was hired to go look at an EV manufacturer, an electric vehicle manufacturer. And they said, Jim, I want you to come in here and save us 10 million $10 million a year in payroll. And I'm going to give you a week to figure out how to do it. So I can go in and say, look, it's not going to take me a week. I'll just go in, I'll grab your payroll, and we're going to fire 25% of your workforce. That's $10 million. My job is done. There, I've increased your efficiency because I just saved you $10 million a year in payroll by firing 25% of your workforce. The problem is that 25% I fired, they're not just hanging around. Companies don't hire people to lean against the wall or do nothing or be lazy or be absent. If you can't do your job well, if you're absent, if you're lazy, you get fired for cause. If you're still there and you're working, you are adding value in excess of what the company is paying you. So if the company pays you 100,000 a year, you must be adding at least that much value, or your job would not exist. So if I go into an EV maker, a company I've picked at random, fire 25% of their workforce to claim a savings of, say, $10 million a year, what's going to happen? Well, pretty soon they're going to find out that when equipment breaks down, they don't have the right maintenance people anymore. They're going to find out that they had to slow down the paint line because all the people that run the paint machines, half of them are gone or half of them are new. The air conditioning broke down, so people are dropping from heat exhaustion, and the paint's not drying right. And there's nobody to receive the trucks that are bringing in raw material. There's nobody to load the trains with outgoing cars. None of that is happening because I fired people that were supposed to be doing those things. This is much like Social Security. If we cut a bunch of people out of Social Security, we can't do stuff online anymore. We got to go down to the next county and stand in line for 8 hours, and hopefully we'll get through to somebody that knows how to help us. So if we want to cut payroll, we have to realize that we are going to be cutting services. If we want to reduce the amount of money we spend on US aid, we have to realize that we are no longer going to be saving lives in Africa for pennies per life, because we're no longer giving AIDS treatment and those types of things. We're going to cut vaccination programs down in Texas. That polio or measles vaccines cost almost nothing. We're going to cut that program to save nickels. And then we're going to submit hundreds of children to the measles virus, and some of them are going to die. All right. So we got to be careful about just saving money for the sake of saving money. This is what Dodge is doing, though. Dodge is going in and saying, we're going to cut money. We're going to not look at the services. And we're going to claim all the payroll that we cut as a cost savings. We're not going to take into account that the people we fired are now going to go on unemployment. And that's a new cost to the government. We're not going to take into account the fact that these people were paying taxes, which is a new cost to the government because now they're not paying taxes. We're not going to take into account that these people will become homeless or that they're going to have to use emergency rooms now because they don't have medical plans. We don't take into account that they're going to can't buy new cars, they can't buy clothes anymore, they can't buy the new TV. So these people that we fired are not contributing financially to the environment they're in, the community they're in. In fact, they've become a burden, at least until they find another job somewhere else. None of these collateral costs put into it. Okay. None of the idea of how much services are we losing is put into this equation. All that's put into it is how many people can we fire to lower the amount of money we pay into that. Now, if they were giving vaccines, if the U.S. Department of Health was spending $1 billion a year and had 10,000 people working on a vaccine to give us in case we ever colonize the moon, this would prevent us from catching moon lice. Okay, you might say, well, all right, we can fire those guys and we won't miss that vaccine. So there probably are some services that we don't need and we could probably do without. But by and large, companies I've gone to, remember, of 35 years, I go company to company to company. I've never seen this. I've never seen, if somebody's in there and they're lazy or a department's not needed, it doesn't last long until it's cut. And the government is the same way. Okay, I know a lot of people don't believe that because it's fun to throw things at the government, but I've worked with plenty of government offices, companies, and government industries as well, and they are extremely attentive to their cost structure. Every time they want to spend more money, they got to go to Congress to get that. So they need to be very careful about what they're spending money on and how they justify it, and have to be able to show that there's value in the services they're doing. DOGE, Elon Musk and Donald Trump, they put this thing together. It's not doing any of this. It's going in and just firing people for show. This is political theater. And at the end, it's not just, well, they made it up, it didn't hurt anybody. It's hurting all of us. And it's hurting us in a way that we're going to suffer for generations. The people that were allowed to die across this planet are going to suffer for generations because we tried to save a nickel for political theater. All right, I'll get off my soapbox for now. Thanks for listening.